Hey everyone, this is Ben Weisner, your host and presenter. Thank you for joining me for our webinar, Using Read Live in a Distance Learning Model. I'm a senior member of the Read Live team, and my job is to educate and support teachers and administrators who are using our program with their students. I'm going to provide you with some useful information and tips about using Read Live during this time of school closures and social distancing. It was apparent from the questions that came in that there are a variety of Read Live experience levels present today, so just a few remarks on what this webinar will focus on. This is not an introduction to the basics of the program. We have another webinar posted on our site that covers that. Today we'll be focusing on questions we receive from educators and parents wanting to continue to use the program when students are away from school and cannot be in the personal presence of a teacher, and recommended ways to continue to keep students moving forward within the Read Live program. Obviously, there's a lot to cover, and I may not get to everyone's specific questions, but hopefully you'll all learn at least a few new things this morning. For those questions I don't answer today, we'll try to add those to future webinars, point you to resources where you can find answers yourselves, or I'll follow up with you after the webinar ends. I'll be sharing my slides and resource links for you along with the recording. We'll continue to update these notes and resources as conditions change and new information becomes available, and we'll make them available on our website. The links to resources are embedded in the file called distance-learning_slides with links. All you need to do is click on the blue underlined text to view or download more information. Before we get started and get into the process and the details, I want to let you all know that I speak for Read Naturally when I say that we recognize that we are all in this moment together, and we all have a stake in caring for and supporting the educational needs of your students and their families. These are extraordinary times. All of us are having to make many changes in both our personal and professional lives, but I want to take a moment to let you know that we are here for you and your students. We continue to be available to answer questions and support your success as an educator, even through these new circumstances and challenges. We don't want to see your students or you experience any more disruption than is necessary. We hope this webinar will help provide you with the information and resources you need to continue to improve your students' reading skills development with Read Live, even when you're not in the classroom with your students. Feel free to reach out to us via email, social media, or phone if you need anything at all. Our customer service and technical support staff all continue to work hard to provide you with what you need, even though we too are having to navigate the challenges of working remotely. In short, we are in this together, so please let us know how we can help. Now, let's get started. So as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Here's an outline of what I'll be talking about. For those of you that just want to stick around for the first part of the webinar or recording, feel free to do so and then just hop off whenever you are ready. So we'll start out talking about what it means for schools and families to work in this new landscape of distance learning. I'll talk about how to set up parents who are ready and willing to act as assistants in the students' use of the program. I'll talk about the importance of using screen sharing and remote control tools for teachers who want to continue to work with students remotely. And we'll talk about a specific program called Zoom, which many of you are currently using, how to use that program in conjunction with Read Live to do things like the cold timing, placement activities, placement, and just staying in touch with your students. I'll show you how to do placement, in which we determine a student's starting reading level and goal, and how to adjust student reading levels and goals within the program. I'll show you how to adjust story options, primarily how to change the cold timing requirement from teacher required to student independent, and other options like turning off certain steps like prediction and retell. I'll show you how students use the program, primarily independently, and I'll show you where teachers or assistants need to intervene and help the student move forward. Specifically, I'll show you and speak about the past activities section, which is where most of your time will be spent when working with a student. I'll talk about accessing reports and monitoring student progress, the communication tools built into the program that allow you to stay in touch with parents, and finally, where you can access resources that you can print out and send home to student families. So, let's begin with the basics, learning from home. I'm sure all of you have received communications and guidelines from your schools and districts about processes and the basic elements of distance learning, but I'm just going to cover a few items here. So remember to determine whether students have a device and internet access. If not, you'll need to resort to paper packets with lessons and resources. And again, we do have some facilities built into the program to allow you to send home paper if students don't have device and internet access. You want to make sure to verify and check in with the students to see if there are any barriers or challenges to using the program. Make sure they are connecting. If not, provide them with support or again, resort to paper. Make sure to document what you're doing for the sake of accountability and provide methods that will work in the future. So if you have a record of what you've done that was successful, if God forbid this happens again, you'll know what to do successfully in the future. And then finally, share best practices with parents and guardians. Provide support and resources for training periodically and just stay in touch. I have a useful little distance learning checklist out on the web that you can download and use for purposes. Again, if you don't have information from your school or district, this is a nice little guideline. So now let's get into the specifics of working with parents as assistants in Read Live. So first and foremost, I want to caution everyone to not be giving out your own teacher password to parents. There's the issue of data privacy. If you provide them with your password, they'll be able to log in and take a look at data that does not belong to them or their child, and also will allow them to manipulate or change data. So we never want to give out our own passwords to parents. Instead, contact your account administrator or school coordinator if you have multiple schools in your account. They're the individuals that can create a Read Live assistant role. Assistants are unique in our program because they can conduct timings and choose remedial actions, but they can't log into the staff module and view or modify student data. When creating assistants, you have a couple of different options. You can create one assistant, like a generic assistant, with one user ID and password and hand that out to all of the assistants, all of the parents that want to work with their kids. Or you can create many individual assistant accounts. The obvious benefit of creating one assistant is it's a lot easier to set up. The downside is that that one assistant can log in and change their password, which would affect everyone's password, obviously. So if you want to, you can create many accounts, many assistant accounts, and that way everyone has their own account. And then obviously make sure that you are providing training resources and discussing expectations for student use of the program. And I'll show you where you can find more information about how to do that. I want to remind everyone to communicate with parents that you, the teacher, should be the point of contact with Read Naturally whenever possible. We won't have information about the student the way you, the teacher, would. So if there's an issue, parents should communicate with the teacher and teachers should contact us. Also, if you are having trouble reaching your account administrator or need help with that, please contact us and we will be able to assist you with that. So in a pinch, we can go into your account and create an assistant role for you. So let me get out of my PowerPoint here, and I am going to bring up my Read Live account, and I'm going to show you how an account administrator would create a Read Live assistant. So I'm going to click on staff member, and I'm going to log into my account. Remember, you need your 8-digit account ID, and then log in as the administrator for my sample account here. And the admin or the school coordinator will go to the home page and then click Staff Member Administration. From here, they will click on Add Staff Member. Now, most frequently, what the account admin or the school coordinator will do is create a teacher role. And you can see teachers can add and edit licensed students, view student data, can be a student's lead teacher, and conduct timings and past activities. But in this case, we're just going to create a Read Live assistant, and all they can do is conduct timings and past activities. So you'll fill in this information, and then an important tip is make sure to select all schools if you have multiple schools in your account. Enter in not the parent's email, but your email, because you're going to be managing that account. And then once you've done that, you'll receive an email from our system ask you to create a password, a permanent password, and that user ID and password is what you'll send off to your assistants. So I won't do that now, but that's how you would do it. And again, you can create one or many. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So what can assistants do? From within the student module, they'll be able to conduct hold timings and past activities. They can review student work. In other words, they can bring up the review work screen and take a look at the current fluency and comprehension reports for that student's work. They can reset a story. So if a student gets stuck in the program and needs to get back to the story selection screen, they can reset it. They can print out any of the stories in any of the levels, and they can print out awards. They cannot log into the staff module. If they log into the staff module, this is what they'll see. So if they're using their assistant user ID and password, they'll be taken to essentially a training page. So this is where they can find the information that they need to use the program as an assistant. There are 5 different videos there that show how a student works through the story, how they work through some phonics, through the phonics stories and the phonics levels, and then what happens if they don't pass the remedial actions. And then on the left side of the page, you'll see specific resources that helps them understand how to conduct a 1-minute timing, how to get through the past activities, and then much more detailed information in the Read Live user guide. So as far as training and communicating how they are going to use the program and how their students are going to use the program, the most important set of information will be shown once they log in with their assistant user ID and password into the staff member module. If you have any questions about that, feel free to give us a call and we can assist you. These are some very important resources, again, in your handout that ends with slides with links. You'll be able to click on these blue underlined resource links, which will give you more information. So that using Read Live at Home link at the bottom goes into detail about how to set up parents as assistants. Okay, let's talk about something else that's very important. That's the idea of screen sharing and remote control when you and your student are not in the same physical facility. If you are unable to get parents to act as assistants, or you don't want to have parents act as assistants, you can use third-party applications to share or control screens on student devices. And remember, Read Naturally Live works on Macs, Windows computers, Chromebooks, and iPads. Sharing and controlling screens is particularly important when you are placing students for the first time, conducting cold timings and pass activities, and when you want to conference with or support students when they're using the program. Now, third-party apps definitely require some planning, setup, and some training. We can't train you on specific apps, although we do have some recommendations and some information about using a very specific app called Zoom, which we recommend. Zoom is free and has some other very nice features that I'll talk about in a moment. But there are lots of apps that let you do screen sharing and remote control, and I provided you with a link that will list a number of those applications. But even if you don't use an application, it is possible for you to do screen sharing and remote control directly within Windows or Mac operating systems, but you will need to talk to your IT support for them to assist you with that. And if you're a Google school and you're using Google tools like Google Classroom, Hangouts, etc., there is a program called Remote Desktop, which does allow you, again, to take control over a student's screen for the cold timings and pass timings if that's what you want. But as I said, we like Zoom a lot, and I'm going to talk about that for a moment and show you how to use some of its features. So why Zoom? Well, number one, it's free. And number two, they've opened up Zoom basic accounts so that there are no time limits. Normally there's a 40-minute time limit if you're working with multiple people at a time in a session. So for now, you can go to their website, let them know that you're working with a school, and they'll remove that time limit for you. There are features, as I've spoken about, that allow you to remote control a student's device, lets you share screens with a student. And another nice little feature is if you're working with groups of students at one time, they have a feature called breakout rooms, which allows you to put students in different sessions or sections within your online meeting. So you can pop in and out of those sessions and provide individual support for students when they're ready to be timed. Zoom is compatible with all of our platforms, and they have excellent training and support, a lot of great resources specifically for education users, and they have a very large user base in the educational community, so you can find other folks in other schools or in your school or district, and lots of YouTube videos, etc. So very useful tool. So how do you get started with Zoom? You just set up an account at zoom.us. You'll download their application. Again, it's free. It will set up on your computer, even on your iPad. You'll schedule a meeting with your student. You'll share that link for that meeting with your student. You'll start the meeting, and then you'll use the tools to manage a class virtually. So again, things like sharing your screen, chat. There's a way to raise your hand. There's online meeting where you're doing face-to-face communication, etc. How do you use Zoom specifically with Read Live? So here's 7 steps that will help you with that. So first, you would start a Zoom session with one or more students. As I said earlier, if you're working with multiple students, consider using the feature called breakout rooms. You want to make sure that you and your students have agreed on a method for students to let you know that they're ready for timing or that they need assistance. If you're using breakout rooms, there's a button that says Ask for Help, and that will let you know that the student is ready for you, and you can just pop into their room. Otherwise, they can chat you, or there's a virtual hand that they can raise. You want to make sure to ask students to share their screen so that you can see what they're doing. They may need to be shown how to do this, although it's pretty simple. There's just a little button that I'll show you that they click on that says Share Screen. From there, you will want to request control of their screen from an area of Zoom called View Options. You'll start the timing or provide other supports, and then when the timing or the past activities are complete, you will relinquish control over their screen, and then they can get back to using the program without you kind of logged into their screen or account. So let's talk a little bit about sharing a screen. The screen share feature allows you or your student to display your screen in a meeting or their screen in a meeting. Share screen has to happen before you take remote control in Zoom. Share screen is going to be useful for placement, past activities, especially on an iPad, and supporting students when they need assistance. This is what that looks like in Zoom. If you see the toolbar at the bottom, there's that green button that says Share Screen. You would click on that, and then you would choose which screen or which application you want to share with your student, or the student would do the same. They would select their web browser or their iPad app, Read Live iPad app, so that you could see it. One thing that's very important, small, often overlooked setting, is share computer sound. So you'll see that I've highlighted that in the lower left-hand corner. It's just a little checkbox. You want to be able to hear the sound that the student is hearing and vice versa. So make sure to check that before you do a screen share. So taking it one step further, oh, by the way, I'm going to go back to that screen and mention one more support issue. If you are using Chromebooks with your students and your Chromebooks have been locked down by your technology folks, make sure to choose the web version of Zoom and don't install any applications, otherwise it won't work. Again, you can give us a call on our support line and we can assist you with that if you're running into problems on Chromebooks. Okay, so taking it one step further, controlling the screen. What does that mean? Well, again, there are going to be times when you want to remote control into your students' activity. When they're using Read Live, you may want to do past activities with them. So you can either request remote control of your student's screen, or the student can just give you control without you requesting it, although you would have to mention that you want it. So in other words, you can request it through the application, or you can just tell your student that you want them to give you control. This is going to be useful specifically for teacher-required cold timing and for running the past activities. One thing to note, another little support issue to note, is that you cannot control an iPad screen. In other words, if your student is using an iPad for using Read Live, you will not be able to take control over it. And that's because of some security issues built into the iOS operating system. I'll talk about how to work around that limitation in a little bit. But this is what it looks like. So in other words, when you are doing when your student is doing a screen share, there's a portion of the Zoom window that says View Options. You'll just click on that, and there's a Request Remote Control. So you would simply select that, and then the student would get a message. They would agree to your taking control, and then you can click on the Conduct Past Activities button, type in your password. Obviously, the student would not be able to see it, and then begin your past activities. Same with cold timing. Otherwise, your student can click on the little mouse in the toolbar on the bottom and say Give Mouse Keyboard Control to, and then you would have it that way. Either way, whatever is easiest for you. Both work. So some other tips for using Zoom. Make sure to review and adjust your settings as you want them to be set when you first get started with Zoom. There's a lot of tutorials and information and documentation on the Zoom website, and I'm not going to go into all of those, but some specific things that you may want to take a look at are setting up breakout rooms or screen sharing, etc. Before sharing your screen, remember to turn on Share Computer Sound. Same goes for your student. For multiple students during a session, we recommend using breakout rooms. You can share files like PDFs of placement passages, PDFs of the story if they want a printed copy, or crossword puzzles. And I'll talk about some of those things when we talk about print resources. And then finally, a nice feature in Zoom is you can record a session for review. So you can record your session with your students' permission and then use that to go over that with them or share it with their parent. I've created a document with a list of additional resources related to Zoom and its use in educational settings, and you can access that with this handy little link here. Okay, so these are this first part of the webinar is what so many people have been asking about. How do teachers and parents work with students remotely? The next part of this webinar is geared towards, to some degree, people who have never used Read Live before, some people who have limited experience. So feel free to stick around for more information. There's other information that you may not have, but if you've gotten what you've needed for your questions, feel free to hop off and go and start using the program remotely. But for those of you that have not used Read Live before, here's some other tips and information. So if you don't have Read Live yet, you've got a parent who wants to use it at home, they don't have an account with their student, or you want your own separate account, or if you're using Encore, for example, and you want to try the digital version of Read Naturally, first thing you do is go to our website and sign up for a free trial. You can use it for 60 days. We have a little promo going, so you can use it through the end of May 31st, so 60 days or more. No limit on student licenses. You want to make sure to review resources and training online. We've got a specific one-stop shop help page where you can view videos, sign up for free online training, view recorded webinars, etc. Or you can schedule a live webinar with me or one of my colleagues. Just call our customer service line or give me or send me an email and we can schedule something for you. Next thing you'll do is set up your account and add students. Make sure to place your students to find the best fit for them into the appropriate reading level. You may also at this point want to set some story options, for example, not turning off cold timing, but setting cold timing to be student independent instead of teacher required. That would be one of the things that we recommend during this time of remote learning. And then finally, train your students and communicate with parents, especially communicating with parents on a regular basis. And we have tools for all of those and resources for all of these things. So that's how you get started if you don't already have Read Live. Here's some links to help you get started. So once you've have your account and you start adding your students, you want to make sure to place them appropriately and adjust levels and goals as necessary. So if you're doing remote learning or distance learning, how do you place students? So I'm going to run through a variety of options. Number one is you're going to log into Zoom or whatever other sharing program that you have that lets you share your screen with your student. And you're going to display your screen. So you've logged into the teacher module or the staff member module. And then you'll display your screen. You'll click on the place button in the staff member module. I'll demo that for you a little bit later. And then you'll share that via Zoom. You can also send the student a PDF copy of the placement passage if you want to do it that way. And then you'll run through the placement process while the student is reading from your Zoom screen. Another way to do it is if you haven't already placed your student, when they log in for the very first time, they will come to a placement screen themselves, and then they would have to share that screen with you, and then you would run through a remote control session. Okay, so I'll say that again. They would log in if they haven't been placed. They're going to share their screen with you in Zoom, and then you're going to initiate a remote control session, and then you'll begin the placement process that way. Another way to do it would be if students don't have access to a device currently, or internet access, or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, you can send them printed copies of the placement passage and place them over the telephone. Once you've gotten their placement score, you can enter or edit the level and the goal in Read Live. Or if they've been using the program in another format like Encore and you already know the student's level and goal, you can just enter that manually. So this is what it looks like when you're running placement from within the staff member module. You would click on the Place button. You would select a starting reading level and click Next. One thing I want to point out to you here is on this screen, this is where you can find that Print Placement Stories feature. Notice that right next to the Next button. Click on Print Placement Stories and that will generate the placement stories as a PDF file. Then you'll go forward to the passage, the placement passage, and have student read from the passage for 1 minute. Enter in the number of words that they've missed, and that will give them a score of words correct per minute. And then the program uses the score to determine the next step. That would be assigning them to a goal and a level, and you would select the series, or letting you know that that score does not fit within the recommended range, and will have you do another placement passage with the student. So very simple, several steps. Shouldn't take you more than a few minutes to do that. Here's some great resources for learning how to do placement. We've got a video on our Read Live help page, and then some more information, including information about what to do if you're not sure whether students have been placed correctly. We've got a checking initial placement worksheet on our website that you can use for that purpose. Okay, so that's it for placement. And actually, before I move on from that screen, I'm going to demo this very quickly. So let me get out of my PowerPoint, and I'm going to pop into my account. And I'm going to log in as a teacher. And to place students, you go to the home page, you click Read Naturally Live if the student has been entered into the program, and then you find the student that you want to place, in this case Jenny Richmond. If I scroll horizontally, I can see that she does not yet have a series level or goal. So remember, I'll be sharing this screen with Jenny. I'll click on Place. I'll select a starting reading level. Click Next, and then that will take me through those screens that I showed you earlier. Here's that Print Placement Stories button again. So that's one way to do it. And another way to do it is Jenny can just log in on the student side. Let me log in with Jenny.
Before you can begin working, your teacher must assign you a series, level, and goal. Please tell your teacher.
So this is what she would see when she logs in if she hasn't been assigned a level and goal. And in this case, she would share her screen with you. You would do a remote control session, and you would click Conduct Placement, type in your user ID and password, and begin that process. Remember that assistants cannot do this. Only the lead teacher can do this placement process, not the parent or assistant. Okay, so let me get back to my PowerPoint. And let's talk about story options. So the main reason you may want to start using story options in this transition to distance learning is to allow students to do their goal timings without requiring the teacher or parent to be present. So allowing them to do student independent goal timings. Considering that you all will be extra stretched and parents might not be up to the task, this will allow you to reduce your burden or your parents' burden to have the student conduct the cold timing without a teacher looking on. So it's something that is certainly okay from our perspective to allow to happen in this special time. Otherwise, if you want to do it, then just leave it as is, teacher required, and then you can remote control to do the cold timing if that's what you want to do. You can access story options either from the staff member module or the student module. And again, only the lead teacher can make these changes, not the parent assistant. And you can make other adjustments as necessary. So you can adjust the amount of time that students have for prediction and retell. You can change the number of read-alongs. You can turn off prediction and or retell. And for some of your students, you may want to allow them to read along with the passage in Spanish. So we do have a Spanish read-along option for levels 1.0 through 4.5 in our sequence series. So this is what the story options screen looks like. You cannot change levels and goals here. That's in a separate screen. But as I said, you can click on the drop-down bar under cold timing and change from teacher required to student independent. Flip some of those switches, change different variables, etc. You can do that for one student or for multiple students at a time. And here's some information about how to access story options, what that looks like, where to find it, and how to customize the program for students. So again, this may be a little bit basic for some of you, but there's a lot of people here who've never used the program before, and some people who've never had students logging in remotely before. So here's some information that hopefully is useful for some of you. So how do students use the program when they're not in the classroom? Well, obviously they need an appropriate device and an internet connection. Then they'll open up a browser or the Read Live app. If they're using a browser, they'll go to readlive.readnaturally.com. They'll click on the student button. If they're using the iPad app, they won't need to click on the student button. And then they'll enter their student credentials. So 3 pieces of information will have to be entered. The account ID, which is that 8-digit number that begins with 000 that you also use when you log in, their user ID, and their password. Remember to let them know that they need to log out when they're done with the session. And when they do that, their session will be saved and there won't be any problems if they've closed out of the program without logging out. And then there might be a conflict with trying to get back in again, where you'll have to reset. So those are the simple steps. Have a device, go to the appropriate website or have the app, enter in account ID, user ID, and password, and that's it, and then they can get started if they've been placed. So how do they work through the steps? Again, high-level overview. Some of you already know this, but I'm going to run through it quickly anyway. This is a steps sheet. We also sell it as a poster, but you can download it as an 8.5 by 11 PDF file. That's useful to send home to parents as well. We're working on a Spanish language version of that, and we'll post it out on our website soon. And you can use that to send home to Spanish-speaking families so that they at least know what the student is doing at home. So let's walk through quickly what these steps look like. So once students log in and they've been placed, they'll select a story that you've set for them during the placement test. There are 24 nonfiction passages in a reading level. In our sequence and phonics series, there's 12 passages in our idiom series, and they have access to all of those. First step is the keyword step. So they will listen to key vocabulary words and their definitions. They'll write a prediction. They have 2 minutes to complete that. And then if teacher required setting has been set, which is the default setting in story options, they'll come to this waiting activity called Wordtastic. So rule of thumb is whenever the student sees these red bars on the top and the bottom, they'll typically see that 3 different times. Cold timing, if they're doing teacher-required cold timing, pass activities, and placement. If you haven't already placed them, remember we saw those red bars at the top of the bottom. So whenever they see those red bars, that means they're waiting for an assistant or the teacher to release them to move forward. So if you are doing remote control, you'll want to have the student share the screen, remote control in, and click on Conduct Cold Timing. Otherwise, remember you can change story options so that students do this cold timing step independently of an assistant or a teacher. So this cold timing step takes about a minute. They'll get a score. They'll see their cold timing compared to their goal. They'll do the read-along, which is one of the components of the Read Naturally strategy, that teacher modeling piece. Typically 3 read-alongs are required. Then they'll practice without the support of the narrator. They'll answer some quiz questions. They'll write a retell. If they're in the phonics series, instead of the retell, a word list activity will appear. And then again, this is the second time, potentially, when someone needs to move them forward. First one was cold timing if teacher required is set, but the pass step, conducting pass activities, students always have to do. They always need an assistant or a teacher to move them forward here. So if the teacher is doing it, you'll want to remote control, click on Conduct Pass Activities and go through those steps. Or if a parent is available, he or she will click Conduct Pass Activities. So the pass activities, I won't get into them in detail here, but just show you the screens, what they look like. You'll click on Start Timing, 1-minute timing. You'll count the number of words missed, enter those, and enter in an expression score. Notice that little I button next to the drop down for expression score. If you click on that, it will show you what the difference what the scale looks like for 1 to 4 expression score. So the documentation for that, the rubric for that, is built into the screen. They'll see their score. Assistant or teacher will review any open-ended questions from the quiz. You'll review the retell text. If they were in a phonics level, you'll see the word list and they'll have to run through the word list. And then finally, review work will appear. This is a short story details report where you can see how the student performed and you can discuss their performance here, or the parent can. And then if they missed any of the requirements for passing, they'll see a remedial action screen, and then the assistant or the teacher can determine what steps to take next. In this case, you would have the student go back and re-answer any missed quiz question. So those are the pass activities. Again, it seems like a lot, but shouldn't take very long to get through that section. Okay. This is what the teacher menu looks like. I wanted to show you when you click on the little apple icon when the student is in the program, this is what you would see. So the lead teacher would be able to see all of these capabilities. You would be able to, for example, change story options or change series level and goal, but the parent assistant would not be able to do those things. They would not see those options. They would be able to print stories and awards, review work, reset story, and do a retest of the timing. Once the student has completed a passage or a lesson, they'll see the congratulations screen. And then once you click done, if you have remote controlled into the student's computer, you can at that point relinquish control of the computer and let the student continue working independently. Or the parent can let the student move forward without them being present. So, in a nutshell, that's how it works. Here's some great videos for you, including a Student's Guide to Read Naturally Live. That's a set of 4 videos that students can watch before beginning to use the program or as a refresher reminder of how to use it. It's not a bad idea to have parents watch that as well to see the student's experience. And then there's a nice little conducting a 1-minute timing that goes into detail, demonstrating how 1-minute timing is performed. It's showing you how to do that, but with paper, but the same principles would apply. And then some more information in the other links. Okay, let's review those past activities one more time in a little bit more detail, because this is the most important part of remoting into a student's computer, or the most important part of what a parent assistant would do. So these are the specific activities. Performing the hot timing, so including starting the timing, counting the missed words, and assessing expression. Reviewing any open-ended quiz questions. Reviewing the retell. Running through the timing for the word list in the phonics series. Taking a look at the review work screen and the story details report with the student, and then conducting any remedial actions as necessary. So how are the past activities performed? You have different options depending on who's doing it. Parent as assistant can perform pass in person, obviously, sitting with the student at the same time. Teacher in a remote session, for example, with Zoom, you would do a remote control. Remember, you can use breakout rooms for multiple students. In some cases, remote control will not be possible. If you're not using a program like Zoom, if you're just doing screen share, some other tools don't allow you to do remote control. Or in the case of Zoom, or actually in any other third-party application, you cannot control a user or a student using an iPad. So there's another way to do that. You basically would ask the student to log out of their session, log out of their student session. You would log in on your side, on your computer or device, into the student module with their user ID and password, share your screen, and run through past activities that way. That may sound a little bit complicated, but it's pretty straightforward. We are going to put together a short how-to for that should be ready in a few days, couple days, and we'll link to that as well in our follow-up communication with you. So again, if they're using an iPad at home or some other barrier to remote controlling confronts you, we've got a way around that. Additional resources for you on working through a story, options for students who don't pass, etc. So these resources especially are useful for to provide parents who are working as assistants in the story. Okay, progress monitoring. So obviously the point is to keep your students moving forward, to keep them motivated and challenged. And we want to continue doing that even when working remotely. And obviously this is possible by using the data that is generated in the program. This is one of the nice things about using Read Live over some of the paper products is we collect a lot of data that allows you to make informed decisions when working with students in the program. There are 2 high-level times when you are going to be checking data and making changes to students' levels and goals. One is checking the students' placement scores after several stories have been completed, and then keeping the student challenged over time. We've got a lot of resources, a lot of webinars, and our online training goes into this in depth. And of course, if you need more information, if you want us to take a look at your specific data, we're happy to do that. There's no charge for that. You want to contact my associate Claire Hayes, Claire Hayes at readnaturally.com, and she'd be happy to review your reports and make the recommendations that will help you keep your students moving forward. And then the resources in your slides with links document will get you to some videos and other useful downloads to help you with this piece of it. Okay, communicating with parents. We have a number of tools built into the program, so in addition to just calling them up on the phone or using Zoom to do a kind of a face-to-face meeting, we have built-in tools in the program. I'm going to demonstrate them for you in a moment. We've got a welcome letter in both English and Spanish. We've got a progress letter. It's basically a report in the form of a letter that can be sent home to parents. Certificates and awards. You can print out or save a copy of the story. And there's that story details report that we saw in the review work screen. You can use Zoom to demo and share reports, or you can just send those reports home as PDFs. And as I said, you can record a session and share that with the parent as well. So let me step out of this slide, and I'm going to get into the program. Oops. And log in as the lead teacher. Again, the assistant cannot do this, but the teacher can. And this is where you would find the reports. There's a variety of reports here. The story details report can be found here. If you're looking for student login credentials, the student passwords report will provide you with their user ID and password. And there's even a new student placement report that we just added a few weeks ago. But if you click on the Read Naturally Live tile, there are a number of tools sprinkled around here that are going to be useful for you. Number one, this is where you find change story options. So if you just click on the student's name, the checkbox, and click change story options, you can do that for one or more students at a time. This is where you can print out the stories. You can print out all the stories for a level, or just one or two. When you print out a story, it saves it as a PDF file or displays it as a PDF file. You'll have to save it yourself. And then notice that there's the story text and the quiz questions and the image. For the phonics levels, you'll also get the word list. This is where you can print out a welcome letter in English. I'll show you later where you can find one in Spanish. This is where you would print out the progress letter. So again, if you just click on the little checkbox next to the student's name, click Print Progress Letter, you would fill in the beginning and ending date for the amount of time that you want to show progress, and that would generate a letter as a PDF file. If you scroll horizontally, you'll need to scroll to find some of these other tools, these other capabilities and features. Remember, here's the placement button. The edit button under assignment is where you can either enter in series level and goal or modify an existing series level or goal. And just change that here. Again, all the way to the right here. The Reset Story button lets you get the student back to the story selection screen if they're stuck in a story. The Print Awards button allows you to generate different types of certificates and awards, either for the number of stories completed in a level or for a specific story. Specific story kind of looks like that certificate, that congratulations certificate that appears after they've completed one of the passages. And then finally, email contacts. The nice thing about email contacts is it lets you, this is the one I want. It lets you generate the different progress, the progress letter, the different awards and certificates and email them directly home to parents from within the program. So you wouldn't need to download them, you would just generate them, and the Read Live program automatically will send that to the parents. You can enter in your own specific customized text for each student, etc. Now, in order to do that, you want to make sure when you add your students to include parent or guardian information. So specifically, you want to make sure to enter in an email address. If there's no email address, you'll see what happened when I clicked on one of the students that didn't have contact information. You just get a little error message that says the program can't do it. But for Melissa, I've entered in an email address, and then so it allows me to run through that that feature, that capability. So those are the primary parent communication tools that I wanted to demonstrate for you. And let me get back to my PowerPoint. Here's a screen capture of that contact field in the student details screen. And then here's some more resources that you can use to assist you with following through on that parent communication, school-to-home communication. So I mentioned print resources. I've been talking about these throughout, but just thought I'd put this in a separate section for your students that perhaps don't have access to a device or internet. You can put together some print resources using the built-in capabilities of Read Naturally Live, Read Live, and also you can download resources that aren't built into the program but we've uploaded to our website. And you can share these PDFs with parents or with students via Google Classroom, Zoom, or email. So you can print out the stories. As I said, that includes the quiz and word list if they're in the phonics series. Placement passages can be printed. We have crossword puzzles for each of the passages out on our website. I'll show you where you can find those. And we also have the vocabulary words listed out in separate glossary booklets that you can download as PDF files as well. So other tips and questions that I haven't necessarily included in my previous slides. Kind of a miscellaneous grab bag here. I'm going to go through some of these. So we've gotten some questions about what kind of devices that Read Live supports. So I mentioned those. We support Mac and Windows computers, Chromebooks, and iPads. We get questions sometimes, will this work on a Kindle, on an Android tablet, or on a cell phone? So the answer to all three of those is no. No cell phones, no Android tablets, and no Kindles. Do you have other programs for home use? We do indeed. We do indeed. 1 Minute Reader is a great program for home use. It employs the same strategies but in a simplified format with content that is not already in Read Live. I'll show you where you can find those. You can have those as either iPad apps or printed booklets. And then we have a free version of our Splatonym app, our iPad app, available until March 31st. Normally, you would have to pay for that, but if you grab it before the end of the month, you can have that on your iPad. Both of those are great for home use for students. What if families don't have access to internet or devices? Again, we've got print resources that you can use to create packets and work with students remotely or have students work with their parents. Obviously, it won't be the same, but that's the best you can do. That's the best you can do. What if students can't complete a story? I showed you that reset button in the staff member module. The parent assistant would also have access to that. If they get stuck, they can just click on reset, and that gets the student back to the story selection screen. And then we have another question. How do you know if students have been using the program? So I'm going to pop into my browser again and show you There's a couple of ways that you can see whether students are using the program. Unfortunately, we can't show you how long they've been using it. But if you go back to the student setup screen, that will show you last login for students. And you can sort that by clicking on the column header. And that will show you the last time, or the most recent time, I should say, that the student has logged into the program. Shows you the date and the time. The other way that you can keep track of that is in the reports. If you go to reports and do a students at a glance report, that'll show you how many stories a student has completed within a specific time frame. So you just select the students, and then you would select a specific time frame, let's say last week, last few days, and then it would show you if the student has completed any stories, but it won't show you whether students are in the middle of a story. You'd have to just kind of check the timestamp in the student setup screen that I showed you earlier. Okay, I'm going to log out of this, and then I'm going to wrap up with some resources that we've put together for you. Let me bring this up again. We've got a great page called Read Live Help. I'm going to run through it with you. It has a whole host of videos, user guides that you can view online, search online, specific help topics, knowledge-based topics, free training and recorded webinars, and job aids. So please do take advantage of that. We are updating it all the time, and we're going to be creating a special one-stop shop page as well for distance learning that will let you know when that's ready sometime in the next few days. So let me show that to you. Again, I'm going to bring up my browser. You can get to help too just by clicking on the little help link in the bottom of your Read Live screen. And that takes you right to it. So on the left side, you'll see a series of videos. I referred to some of these in my link text, in my resources in your handout, but you can find all of them here as well in one place. So it shows you how to set up an account, placing students, etc. On the right side, this is where you find all the great printed resources, online resources, the user guide, how to do 1-minute timing, what happens if students don't pass, in-depth online training that should take you about 3 hours or so. It's a great course. You can do it at your own pace. Recorded webinars if you want more in-depth information. For example, this First Beyond the Basics webinar goes into detail about how to use reports to monitor progress. Here are the videos that you can share with your students to train them, teach them how to use the program, including that steps poster. We'll put up the Spanish steps poster again in a few days. And then welcome letters in English and Spanish, that those crossword puzzles I mentioned earlier, etc. So this is a great place to find additional information that will be useful for you in using the program. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of information. I hope that was useful for you. And let me bring up my slide again and remind you that for those of you that don't have the program, you can download or request a free 60-day trial. And for those of you that have the program and want help in any way, shape, or form, feel free to reach out to us. You can also email me, ben@readnaturally.com. I want to thank you for your time and attention. And that's it for now for using Read Live and a distance learning model. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.